Okay, so we're going to be practicing expanding and condensing logarithms. Okay, so these are the rules. These are product property, the quotient property, and the power property of logarithms. Okay, and if we follow these rules, it'll allow us to either go from a condensed form to a expanded form, or the expanded form back to the condensed form. They work both ways. Okay, so it's easy to tell which way we're going. For instance, this first problem, it's already condensed. It's in its condensed form. So the first one, we're going to expand it. Okay, we're dealing with the natural log here. So remember, there are parentheses in division like this. So before we can do the top or the bottom, we got to deal with this division. So we're going to be using the quotient property, this one right here. And it says if I have division, I can separate it into two logs that are exactly the same base with subtraction. So my first step is the natural log of x squared minus the natural log of yz. Okay? So you see how I've taken the numerator, written as natural log because that's my base, and the denominator as another natural log, and there's subtraction between them. So that's how you expand that division. Now, I can use for this squared, I can use the power property that tells me I can move it out front. So the next step, this first part will become 2 natural log of x, because this property right here says this n can be moved out in front to put it right here. Okay? Minus, and now we're going to put parentheses because we're separating these two with multiplication. So I've got multiplication here, so I'm using the product property. So I'm going to become two different logarithms, one with the y plus one with the z. And the reason that these two have to be in parentheses is because if this first one, the natural log of y, was just subtracting, then the natural log of z would be adding. And it's not. It's added with the y part, but it's subtracting from the x one. Okay, so order of operations is going to become critical here. Okay? All right. The next one. Well, on this one, before we even get started, we've got to deal with something because I have a cube root sitting here. So I need to change that cube root to its power form. So I need to rewrite this as x to the 7th over, and this is z plus 1, and to the 1/3 power. Okay? The cube root is the same thing as the 1/3 power. So now that I have it in a power form that allows me to use the power property of logarithms, I can do my expansion. Okay? So the first step, again, is dealing with this division. So I separate it into two natural logs, one with the x to the 7th, minus the bottom as a natural log as z plus 1 to the 1/3 power. Okay? Now, the next step is going to be dealing with these two powers. So again, the 7 power and the 1/3 power can be moved out front using the power property. So this becomes 7 ln x minus 1/3 the natural log of z plus 1. And that's it. We're done. You cannot separate this z plus 1. Okay? The only time you can separate what's inside a log is if it's multiplication or division. You cannot separate addition inside of a logarithm. You can't separate this as ln z plus ln 1. It doesn't work that way. Okay? Only multiplication, division. All right, let's look at the next problem. So the next problem is already in its expanded form, so we're actually going to condense it. Okay? So, again, looking back at our properties, when you condense, notice there is no number in front of our logs. So when we go to condense, if there's a number here or here, we have to deal with that first using the power property, and then we can use the product or quotient property. So here in this problem, this 4 in front and this 20 in front, we have to deal with that before we get to these log base 3. Okay, so using the power property, they can go to the powers. So we get log base 3 u to the 4th power minus log base 3 v to the 20 power. Okay, now that there are no numbers and our bases are the same, we can condense this into a single logarithm. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite two logarithms as one, log base 3. Since this is subtraction, that means I'm using the quotient property, which means we're putting the u to the 4th comes first, so that goes on top, and on bottom we get v to the 20th. Okay, the most common mistake I see students making is writing it with two logs, like going from here, and the blue one is not correct, but rewriting it as log base 3 of u to the 4th over log base 3 v to the 20th. That is not correct. Okay, the whole point of condensing is to take multiple logarithms, in this case 2 logarithms, and condense it down into one logarithm. Okay? Alright. The next one. Again, we're dealing with condensing. Okay? So, order of operations says that we got to do what's inside the parentheses first, right? So, before we can deal with this 2 or this minus, we got to do what's inside these parentheses, what's inside these parentheses. Okay? So, 2, deal with what's in the parentheses first. So I have division here. So this is subtraction. I'm going to condense this into a single log with division. So it's going to be log, and it's 2x over y, minus, and then the other parentheses, we've got addition, but then we have this 2 that we have to move first. Okay, so this 2 moves up to the 5. So we get log of 3 times 5 squared. Okay. Now we got to deal with this. Before we can actually do the subtraction with the logs, they've got to get the same number in front. So this doesn't have a 2 over here. There's no 2. We got to deal with this. So it's going to go to the power of all of this. Okay, so it's going to be the log of parentheses 2x over y squared minus the log 5 squared is 25, and 25 times 3 is 75. And now, since we have log base 10 and log base 10, no numbers, we can deal with this subtraction here and condense it one more time using the quotient property, which will give us one logarithm with 2x over y squared on the top divided by 75. And that is our final logarithm. And again, our final condensed logarithm should look similar to what we started with. Okay? So if you see, it's all of this right here, including this, so it's technically all of this divided by all of that. And that's what we have here. We have the 2x, the y, and this 2 here from the front, all divided by 3, the 2, and the 5. Okay? So it should still, not to mention, if we expand this out, the ending result, if we expand this out, we should be able to get back to where we started. Okay? Let's look at the next one. This one looks similar to one we've already done. So the first thing we have to do is we have to deal with the square root of x here. So we rewrite the natural log of 4 times x to the 1/2 power over 3z cubed. Okay? So now that we have everything in its powers, we can actually start expanding. So again, we're going to start with the division. So we separate it into 4 x to the 1/2 minus the natural log of 3z cubed. Okay? Now, before we can move the powers, we have to separate our numbers. Okay? So again, I'm going to put this and this in parentheses just so that I know in case there's any problems. So these parentheses, the natural log of 4 plus the natural log of x to the 1/2 end parentheses minus, now we split these up, the natural log of 3 plus the natural log of z cubed. And now we can use the power property to move the 1/2 and the 3. So our final answer will be the natural log of 4 plus 1/2 ln x minus the natural log of 3 plus 3 ln z. And that is our expanded form. And now our last example. Again, we got to change this root to its power, and since it's the fourth root, that's the 1/4 power. So we get log, and on top it's going to be 6y to the 1/4 over x squared z. So first step is, again, dealing with this division, splitting it into two logs, and 6y to the 1/4 minus log x squared z. Okay, and again, I'm going to put parentheses around this just so that if any issue arises from order of operations, we're covered. Okay, because it's this minus that. So again, those parentheses here represent that parentheses in the original. So next step, we're going to move this power here. So parentheses 1/4 log of 6y minus, and in this one I can actually separate my x squared and my z. Okay, because the power is only with the x. I can't do the power until I separate those two. Okay, so that's my next step. Now, just like I did before, this 6y is in parentheses. Okay, so I got to keep that. So I'm going to end up with 1/4 parentheses, and I'm separating this, the log 6 plus log y, and I'll put these outside ones as brackets so you can tell, minus parentheses, and that's those parentheses, and now we move this power, so 2 log x plus log z, and that's our final condensed logarithm. And again, it should look with kind of what we started. So notice up here at the beginning, on the top, I had parentheses, power, parentheses. So look, when I finished, I have parentheses, here's that power, parentheses. On the bottom, I have parentheses with the power on the inside. So parentheses with the power on the inside. So you kind of can see the way it's supposed to look from where you start and where you finish. And if it doesn't look the same, then we've probably done something wrong. But that is expanding and condensing logarithms, the basic ones.